I've turned the page. I'm now focused on the Northwestern Wildcats. Who are the Wildcats? I mean, despite playing at home, is this going to be a trap game for USC? They're playing on a Friday night, short week, off a big win in a hostile environment, Lincoln, Nebraska. What's the atmosphere going to be like at the Coliseum? That's why I'm asking. We're going to talk about that, plus a whole lot more on this episode of Locked On USC.
You are Locked On USC, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day. Whether you're watching this show on YouTube, wherever you want to download this podcast, you pick the platform. This show is going to be free. This show is always going to appreciate your support. And this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Here's another question. Will anyone care? Will anyone show up for this USC game Friday night against Northwestern? Remember, going into the season, they were supposed to be a bottom feeder, right? Battling for the cellar. Didn't turn out that way. They're turning out to be a pretty decent program through 8 games. Trojans went on the road. They beat the Huskers in one of the best environments I have been a part of in a long time. I mean, I'd say it would rank up there with some of the great USC Notre Dame games, especially on the road in South Bend. Just a really, really cool environment. And I'll even take it a step further. It was better than that USC versus LSU game last year in Las Vegas. I don't anticipate it happening. But however, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. USC has a little bit of a letdown Friday night, especially, and I brought up, what's the atmosphere going to be like at the Coliseum? What's it going to be like if the energy is low, right? Nobody shows up. Remember, last year USC hosted a Friday night game against Rutgers. It was the same night, the same day that the Dodgers and Yankees were playing a World Series game at up there at Chavez Ravine, not too far away from the LA Coliseum. I went back and looked. They said there were 63,000 at the Coliseum for that game against Rutgers. Remember, there was a World Series game going on just down the street. That number, that 63K, that might be just a little bit inflated. Just saying. There was a decent crowd, but it wasn't close to 63,000. Well, here's the thing. The World Series is over. The Doyers, they beat the Toronto Blue Jays. So guess what? The fans don't have to flip a coin for a game this weekend. Nothing else going on Friday night. Come hang out at the Coliseum. Nothing of importance. No Laker game. Well, there might be a Laker or Clipper game, but really, who cares? Not when USC football season's in effect. So again, hopefully there will be actually 63,000 for the game against Northwestern on our Friday night. And I'm saying that because, look, the last time I actually paid serious attention to Northwestern, you got to go back to 1995, that 95 season. That's when USC ended up playing them in the Rose Bowl, the 96 Rose Bowl. That's the team USC had, Keyshawn Johnson, Sammy Knight, Darrell Russell, some young freshman named Marvin Powell III. It was a really good USC team. They were ranked 17th when they took on the number 3 ranked Northwestern Wildcats. They were the darlings of the country. Everybody who was not a USC fan wanted Northwestern to win that game. I mean, I can't remember how long it had been since they had been to the Rose Bowl prior to that, but I believe it was the 60s. So yeah, everybody was a Northwestern fan that wasn't a USC fan. So I'm not going to lie about this. Northwestern 2025. They're one of those teams that, they play a really boring brand of football. And really what they do is they just play steady, consistent, don't make a lot of mistakes. They don't beat themselves. And then they hope their opponent just lets them hang around long enough so they can, make a play here or there and end up on the winning side of the ledger. Well, so far this year, they're 5-3 overall, 3-2 in conference. Put that in perspective. Penn State, they're 0-5 in conference. Just remember, Northwestern was supposed to battle Purdue and UCLA for the Cellar Dweller Award. They are overachieving big time. This is who they played through 8 games. They lost their opener at Tulane. They came home. They beat Western Illinois. Then they gave Oregon a big time battle at home, 34-14. They lost, but pretty good matchup, for them. Then after that loss, I think they gained some confidence, seeing how well or how close they kept the game against Oregon. They went on a 4-game winning streak. And in that winning streak, that include wins over UCLA before they started to get good. And I'm using finger quotes, good. It basically happened after UCLA fired Deshaun Foster. They beat Louisiana Monroe. They went into Happy Valley and beat Penn State. And then they actually have a 19-0 shutout over a common foe with USC, Purdue. So they got there. The other loss they have on their resume is last week. Well, I should say 2 weeks ago, when they lost a tight game on the road in Lincoln, Nebraska, 28-21. So they've had the bye week, to kind of focus just on USC, kind of lick their wounds and figure out, how did they lose to Nebraska. So that's another reason why USC better be ready to play and not be late. Don't get on the bus and show up to Coliseum not ready to play. Northwestern will be. USC is keeping, they're playing to keep their playoff hopes alive. They want to stay unbeaten at home. Well, here's one reason why this could end up being a trap game if they're overlooking Northwestern. Northwestern is playing for bowl eligibility. They win, they got 6 wins. They're bowling. And that's going to be a huge achievement for this program. Again, remember, no one anticipated them doing anything this year. So after they play USC at the Coliseum, they get to play their last 3 games of the year in Illinois. They're going to host Michigan. They're going to host Minnesota. And then they're going to play at Illinois to close out the year. So that's why they might be looking at this, not as their best opportunity, but it sure as heck is going to take a lot of pressure off them to, have to beat Michigan and Minnesota. Granted, those games are going to be at home. Still, they would probably like to get the 6 wins before that. They also have a head coach who is coaching I don't know if he's coaching to keep his job, but he's trying to impress the new powers that be. The athletic director and the president who hired David Braun, Northwestern's head coach, no longer there. So the thought is, because there are, so many openings right now, lots of candidates out there. And when you combine that with the fact that Northwestern is actually invested in sports and football, they've got a new stadium project that's, scheduled to open in 2026. They've got a pretty decent NIL piggy bank that's allowed them to bring in 15 transfers. So some people are wondering if the new athletic director, new, school president want to make, kind of a splashy hire. If the right guy's out there, of course. Northwestern's got, some academic standards and stuff they want to, kind of adhere to. So, in other words, you're not going to bring in an Urban Meyer or a Nick Saban type of hire who wants a school that is 100% dedicated to football. I'm not saying Northwestern isn't, but they're going to go with a much, safer hire, someone who isn't going to be the biggest name on campus. I don't know if Northwestern wants their sports programs to dominate their academics, is all I'm saying. They're kind of like Stanford light. So yeah, imagine David Braun getting a win on the road against USC to make your team bowl eligible. That would look pretty good on his resume, trying to impress the new president and the new AD. And that's another reason why USC needs to be ready to come home and dominate. Don't let Northwestern hang around in this game. Friday night games are always tricky, especially on a short week following a road game. For me, as long as USC finds its offensive groove, they should win by at least 2 touchdowns. And I believe the opening line was SC giving up 14.5 points. So, yeah, there's no reason why USC shouldn't win by at least 2 touchdowns. If Northwestern's defense is as good as advertised, they'll wait for USC to make a mistake and try and steal one. Can't let that happen, right? This is a game where USC has to play disciplined. They can't, let their emotions get the best out of them and start having unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, like kind of like the one we saw against Nebraska. That could have came back and bite USC in the butt. So that can't happen. And again, if USC has no weaknesses, I'm segueing to that here very quickly. Someone actually said USC has no weaknesses. I'll tell you who said that in the next segment. But if USC doesn't, if they have no weaknesses, there is absolutely zero excuse, none that I can think of, that USC should not win this game over an overmatched Northwestern squad. USC has the athletes, Northwestern does not. They're smart, they play disciplined football, they play great defense. And great defense, if that travels and you have a strong running game, which Northwestern does, could potentially make this a trap game for USC. So everything I talked about, adding all that in, and I'm going to expound on Northwestern and what they're bringing to the table in the next segment. And then in the third segment, guess what? The new playoff poll is released. If you're watching this episode of Locked on USC on Tuesday, November 4th, guess what? Later in the day, playoff poll's going to be released. Where will USC be in that? We're going to talk about that coming up next. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game, or you know what, maybe you just want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel is going to let you bet on everything on who will score next to that fourth quarter comeback. Plus, you can even combine your live bets. You can do that into a same-game parlay, and you're going to get a shot at a much bigger payout. So it keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, if you're a new customer, FanDuel is giving their new customers, check this out, $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head on over to FanDuel.com, sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Quote, there are no weaknesses with this USC team, head coach David Braun said during his Monday press conference at the Walter Athletic Center. Explosive offense, very talented defense, and very efficient in their special teams play. The way they went into a hostile environment at Nebraska and found a way to win, I think that's reflective of where head coach Lincoln Riley has this team. End quote. I mentioned in the previous segment that Northwestern scored 21 points on offense in their loss 2 weeks ago. Nebraska beat them 28-21. USC scored 21 points and beat Nebraska 21-17. But look, let's just be real right now. Let's drop all that coach speak hyperbole that David Braun just dropped. USC has weaknesses. We know that. USC fans, we've been watching this team all season long. Through 8 games, they're 6-2, but they've had really one good, great game. Now, it happened at home against Michigan when you wanted it to, when you needed it to. But they've been inconsistent for the rest of the year. They've had some really good moments, but they've had some moments that just leave you scratching your head going, when is this going to stop, right? So, a couple of those weaknesses include being inconsistent against the run. And the other is, consistently stopping other teams' passing games. Those are the two issues on defense that could come back. USC just has to, again, be more consistent with, especially against Northwestern against the run. That's one thing they do very well. They average 187 yards per game, right? 187 yards per game on the ground, and they're averaging, nearly 5 yards a carry. I think it was like 4.98, 4.99. Let's just round up. They're averaging 5 yards per carry. It's pretty good. Now, conversely, they don't pass the ball very well, just 172 yards per game. That could help USC. They know that they just want to make Northwestern one-dimensional, force them to throw the ball. Total offense as far as scoring, USC 39.8. We're just going to say they're scoring 40 points a game. Northwestern, 22.5. That's a big jump. That's a big difference. So USC defensively, their run defense gives up on average about 143 yards per game. So I mentioned just a second ago, they want to make Northwestern throw the ball, make them one-dimensional, take away that run game. They're going to try and, play smash mouth, power, Big Ten football. USC has to be up to that challenge. We know USC likes to throw the ball on offense, even when their run game is working better than the passing game. But this is going to be the third game in a row where Jaden Mayava and the USC wide receivers, they're going to be tested. The Wildcats, believe it or not, they're allowing just 165 yards per game. And they might be getting back 3 defensive backs who either missed or partially missed their game against Nebraska. So they're anticipating getting safety Damon Walters, cornerback Josh Fussell, as well as cornerback or first name is O-R-E. Is it or? Adai, A-D-E-Y-I. I apologize if I mispronounced that young man's name. Excuse me. Sometimes I wish we had phonetics for a lot of these names. Anyways, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole too long there. Against Nebraska, USC's top 2 wide receivers, we know them by name, Jacoby Lane, Mekhi Lemon, they were non-entities. 2 catches apiece, dropped balls. That didn't help Jaden's numbers. So hopefully Mekhi, Jacoby, they can break out of their little mini slumps, call it if you will. Mekhi didn't have a great game against Notre Dame. And then, after the bye week, you get ready for Nebraska and really didn't really do a whole lot. So it would be great to see those guys come back and do what we've been wanting to see them do what we've actually been watching Mekhi do all year, and Jacoby Lane in spurts as he's been getting healthier. And it would be great. This would really help USC's cause offensively if King Miller can follow up his performance against Nebraska with another big game at home against Northwestern. So not only does Northwestern defend the pass, they also stop the run. This is going to be a test for USC's offense. Can they be balanced, and can they do both? Northwestern, they're allowing just 139 yards per game. It's pretty good. Pretty good. You combine that with their pass defense, they could make life difficult for USC on offense. So if USC's offense starts out slow out of the gate, Northwestern is going to start believing they can hang around this whole game. Again, this goes back to this is how you fall into these traps. And also keep in mind, I just want to remind everybody, it's been Mayava, he's got 4 games in a row now where he's thrown an interception, and they were bad. And we're not talking about, that guy made a great play. We're talking about, Jaden, that was a terrible play, terrible decision, bad throw. That's got to stop. You got to break that streak, right? We're not going 5 games in a row. This is how good Northwestern's pass defense is. And yeah, you can say, well, Mark, who did they play? It doesn't matter. I said the same thing about Nebraska. They proved it didn't matter who they played. Northwestern's given up just 6 touchdowns through the air. They've got 5 interceptions. Bottom line for me is USC has to establish the run game at home. And if Oregon can put 34 points on Northwestern, guess what? I think USC should be able to match that. And if Nebraska can score 28 at home against Northwestern, I know USC has a better offense than the Cornhuskers. They should be able to put up at least 34 points at home. They should be able to surpass that. Their head coach, David Braun, brought up USC special teams. All right. Guess what? He's right. I want to see 5 point after attempts made and 1 field goal from this week's Big Ten Special Teams Player of the Week, Ryan Sierry. Again, he just delivers. And he doesn't celebrate. He just does his job. Because that's what delivery guys do. So here's my early in the week prediction. I got USC winning this game 38-20 at home. And then they get to get an extra day rest and start preparing for Iowa who will show up the following Saturday. Oh, by the way, that game has a time and a TV. Well, it's going to be played at 12:30, and it's going to be played on either CBS TV or the Big Ten Network. USC wins. I have a feeling it's going to be on CBS because they're going to want to start building up a 7-2 team and a USC team that's more than likely going to show up in the first playoff poll that's being released on Tuesday, November 4th. Where is really the question, and how important is that first playoff poll? We'll talk about that coming up next. One more segment to go. College football is back. We're getting close to the postseason. Just 4 regular season games left for USC. I could not be more excited. I mean, you got the tailgates. I never want to see those end. The rivalries. I never want to see that USC Notre Dame rivalry end. You got the energy in the stands. There's nothing like it. But let's be real. Sometimes getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. With the endless queues, you got those hidden fees. All of a sudden, the price jumps at checkout. All that stuff really is frustrating and sucks. That's why I like to use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices. There's not going to be any surprise fees. What you see is what you pay, and you get to see what your view is going to look like before you check out. I mean, I'm talking about being able to go on to Game Time, check out the view that you want, and get the best price available. Sometimes you can get them for as low as $25 per ticket. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $30 off your first purchase. Terms are going to apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So the first playoff poll is scheduled to be released on November 4th. And as I've been stipulating, I've been one of those guys talking, hey, strength of schedule is going to matter. Some people want to call it strength of record. This is why I'm such a huge, 3 times for emphasis, strong proponent of playing a strong out-of-conference schedule. And if you're a USC fan, that should include Notre Dame. All right? We're not going to talk about that, but you know where I stand on that. Well, it appears that the strength of schedule, or the SOR, we'll call it the strength of record. That's what it stands for. It's going to be a factor in the voting with the playoff committee. That's the word on the street. I was checking out Stan Becton, who writes for the NCAA.com site. He put out a prediction this past Sunday, and he released what he thinks what the first poll is going to look like, and the reasons why these teams are in the positions they are in. It's interesting. The first poll, very SEC centric. I mean, I'll read you as many of the narratives as possible. So number 1 will be Ohio State, 8-0. Ohio State will potentially have just 1 win over a ranked team in the first CFP rankings. Texas, which could lead to some of the committee calling for the Buckeyes to drop from the top spot. However, Ohio State's dominance on the field will pass the eye test for the committee's top spot. I agree. Ohio State on the defensive side of the ball, yeah, they are damn good. And they are efficient on offense. They don't make mistakes. Number 2, they've got Texas A&M, also 8-0. Don't be surprised if the committee ranks A&M at number 2. The Aggies have a win over Notre Dame in the non-conference slate. That could be the difference between them and number 3, Indiana. We know Indiana right now, they look good. They passed the eyeball test. They're 9-0. Look, they've got one of the better wins on the season. They went into Austin, beat Oregon. The rest of their schedule kind of but they are beating teams they're supposed to beat the way you should beat them. I mean, you see what they did to UCLA? That's how you beat bad teams. And especially if you're a good team. Indiana reminds me of a couple of those Pete Carroll teams from back in the 2000s. Just saying. Number 4, you got Alabama at 7-1. There's no one-loss team has a better win than Alabama's win over Georgia on the road. That's according to Stan Becton, and that's why he has them at number 4. Number 5, he has Georgia, 7-1. Georgia's only loss was to Alabama. Number 6, this one's curious. BYU, 8-0. BYU's strength of schedule might be outside of the top 40, but its strength of record after an undefeated start ranks number 4 in the country. That plus a quality win over Utah will help the committee validate its ranking of the Cougars at 6. I disagree. BYU's good. Are they number 6 good? I don't know. Number 7, Ole Miss. They're 8-1. Alabama beat Georgia, and Georgia beat Ole Miss. He's using that whole, transitional thing. Anyways, the ordering of these teams will be simple for the committee. Ole Miss road win over Oklahoma is impressive, but its strength of schedule ranks just 24th. Alabama and Georgia rank inside the top 10, which is why there's a gap between the Rebels and the other SEC one-loss teams. Number 8, Texas Tech. They're 8-1. They got that win. Apparently, Utah is the ish, because if you beat them, you get ranked. Texas Tech's best win, apparently, over Utah. So that's the reason he has them at number 8. Number 9, Oregon, 7-1. Their only loss came to the number 3 ranked Indiana team, but that loss it happened at home in Eugene. They do have that road win against Penn State, but as it turns out, Penn State, they suck. They're no good. I mean, can you believe it? 0-5. 0-5 in the Big Ten Conference, and they were picked literally to be one of the top 2 teams in the country all year and make the playoffs, possibly go undefeated. That's what everyone anticipated. Well, the best laid plans didn't turn out that way. All right, number 10, you got Texas. They're 7-2. Unlike the AP poll voters, the committee will hold more weight in Texas head-to-head win over Oklahoma than it will in a loss to Florida. Texas also picked up another solid win over Vanderbilt, which will be all the committee needs to have the Longhorns as the highest ranked 2-loss team. Who knew? Vanderbilt gives you street cred. Oh well. It's a brave new world. Number 11, Oklahoma, 7-2. They rank behind Texas because of the head-to-head win, but a win over Tennessee keeps the Sooners in the top 12. Okay, is Tennessee really that good this year? Rounding out the top 12, which would be your playoff field, you got Notre Dame. They're 6-2. Notre Dame has won 6 straight games, but they had that season opening loss to Miami, and that doesn't look that good anymore now that Miami's lost 2 in a row. So they're giving Notre Dame credit for beating USC, and their next opportunity to get a ranked, get a win over somebody who's decent is going to be North Carolina State, and we'll see. We'll see how it works. Notre Dame, they cannot afford to lose another game. If they win out, they'll be in the playoffs. Where they end up is really the question. Number 13, Virginia. They're 8-1. Their only loss is to North Carolina State, and that wasn't even a conference game, believe it or not. That was a non-conference matchup somehow. I'm not sure the particulars, but that's the case. So while North Carolina State does not have a winning record, they're 5-4. The loss, I guess, stands out as a borderline bad loss. All right. Number 14, Louisville. Miller Moss. Their only loss came to the Virginia team, ranked directly above them. Number 15, you got Vanderbilt, 7-2. Vanderbilt will have a current ranked win over Missouri on their resume, with its 2 losses coming to top 10 teams in the committee's eyes. So that's why the Commodores are going to open up in the CFP at number 15. They're not going to finish in the CFP top 15 or the top 12. Number 16. This one is where I really start to have issues with Stan Becton's rankings. He's got Miami. They're 6-2. So Miami has that win over Notre Dame. Solid win. But they've lost their last 2 games. And I'm not sure they deserve to be ranked 16. Anyways, we'll see what happens. Here's number 17, Utah. They're 7-2. Utah has 2 losses. Both were to teams that are in the top 10 when they were. So Utah gets what's getting Utah ranked, at least at number 17. are wins over a one-loss Georgia Tech and a recent win over Cincinnati. Speaking of Georgia Tech, they're number 18. They're 8-1. They have just the 84th best strength of schedule. So that's why the committee is going to have them below some of these two-loss teams, according to Stan. And here comes USC checking in at number 19. Right, we know they're 6-2. He says Southern California will slot in at number 19 since it will be one of the few remaining ranked teams with a win over another currently ranked opponent. And he's talking about Michigan, who they beat by 18 points. And Michigan rounds out the top 20. They're 7-2, just behind USC, a team that lost to. But they do have a win over Washington, which helps put them into the top 20. Rounding out the last 5 teams, you got Missouri at 21, Washington at 22, Tennessee at 23, Cincinnati at 24, and Memphis at number 25. We'll see what week 2 of the CFP poll looks like. The first one is never, it's always like, oh, how'd those guys get there? Why are they so high? I guess there's a lot of variables involved. Things start to kind of pair it out. You kind of separate the men from the boys. The second playoff poll is when you get a better idea of how things are going to play out. That's why USC beating Northwestern is so important, because you've got Iowa coming in right after them, and then you have that opportunity to go up to Eugene, Oregon, get a huge win, and then you finish off the year at home against UCLA. Everything is right there for SC. Right now, everybody says, yeah, you know what? They're going to finish with 9 wins. They're not going to beat Oregon. Let's see. I'm going to keep that part of the rah-rah mark going. I know a lot of you think I'm overly negative, and I shouldn't, expect more than what USC is doing so far this year. I disagree. We've talked about that before. You can continue to drop your comments. I'm going to hold USC to the standard. And I'm still not over that loss at Illinois. So anyways, going down a rabbit hole again. I shouldn't be doing that. I start rambling. But when I get these thoughts in my head, I just got to get them out. I apologize. But I think that's why you watch the show. You like what I have to say. That's why you keep coming back. And if you're not an everyday subscriber yet, dude, what's keeping you? Click that red subscribe button, smash that thumbs up, hit that bell notification button so you don't miss an episode. I will be back again tomorrow with another one. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.